Hey, what are you doing in there?
You know, a little birdie told me that you are seriously lacking in caffeination. Good thing I'm here to help. Now, I may not be Alton Brown, but today I am stealing his shtick. So here is Emma's guide on how to use your Moka pot. Let's get going. Now, the first step to using your Moka pot is learning how to disassemble it and clean it. Now, the Moka pot has three main components. The top part, which is sort of the pitcher, the middle, which is the basket that holds the espresso, and the bottom, which is the reservoir that holds the water. All you have to do to take apart a Moka pot is unscrew it and unpiece the components from each other. Now, you might be asking me, Emma, how does the Moka pot work? Well, it's pretty simple actually. So the water in the bottom, when it's boiled, rises up through the espresso grounds, and then it flows up into the pitcher part at the top. The design of the pitcher in the top makes it so that the espresso can't flow back down into the water reservoir. It's kind of like a tiny stovetop version of an espresso machine, which is pretty cool. So the only other part of disassembling the Moka pot is removing the gasket. This is really only for deep cleaning, so I'll do this maybe once every other week. All you have to do is take a fork, put it under the rubber gasket to remove it, and then take out the little slide of metal. Now that we've got our Moka pot disassembled, the next thing to do is clean it. Now, one important thing to note is that you can't clean a Moka pot with soap. It ruins the flavor of the coffee. So all you have to do is use hot water and a paper towel. So let's start with the top piece. We're just gonna run it under warm water and scrub at it with the paper towel, making sure we get into all of those grooves along the side and getting the center portion. Next, after this, we're gonna get that bottom section of the top part. We're just gonna give this a little light scrub. If you're removing the gasket, now is the time when you would take that out and clean the entire rubber section as well as the metal disc. And then you're gonna take a paper towel and kind of get it into a thin shape and put it inside the top bit. That gets out all that gunk that's been building up in there. Then we're gonna go to clean the basket. Again, same thing as before. And then we're just gonna wipe out this bottom section. Make sure that for every piece, you get the outside as well as the inside. We do not want a gross Moka pot sitting on our stove. So one more thing on the daily clean. If you want to make life a little bit easier on yourself, right after you pour out the coffee that you've brewed, just give the top section a little rinse, and that'll prevent all of that espresso gunk building up on the inside, making it so that you don't have to scrub it later. Now, I promise you that just using hot water is not going to make your Moka pot gross, but if you do feel like it needs a super deep clean, you can descale it with vinegar. So all that means is that instead of water in the bottom, you're gonna fill it up as much as you normally would with vinegar and let that run without any espresso in it, and that'll give it a nice deep clean. Now that our Moka pot is all clean, we are ready to make some coffee, and that starts with boiling water. Now you're gonna ask me, Emma, do I really need to boil water for this? No, you don't, but you should. So boiling water means that you have to put the Moka pot on the stove for less time. And the one thing we want to avoid is a burnt flavor in our coffee. We don't like that. So if you put the boiling water in beforehand, it'll spend less time on the stove and you'll get a much more mellow roast. If you don't have a kettle, which is totally fine, you can always heat up the water in the microwave instead. So once we have our boiling water, we're going to pour it into the bottom section of the Moka pot. And on that, you'll see there's a little round marker. It's sort of like an air hole in the bottom. You're going to want to fill up the water to the bottom of that. That's the perfect amount. So there are only two ingredients in coffee: water and coffee grounds, and we are on to the second one. I personally like to use this Dunkin' pre-ground coffee, but you are free to use any kind you like or even grind your own. I will say though, it's a bit of a trial and error process because on a traditional espresso machine, I have like the Starbucks dark roast in the past, but in the Moka pot, it sort of took on a different flavor and it became a little gray and grainy. So just make sure you put in some time to find what blend is right for you. Now for our espresso grounds, we're gonna fill the basket almost to the top, leaving a little bit of room around the edges so that the grounds don't spill out around the sides and cause the pot to seal improperly. It'll have a sort of domed appearance. We also want to make sure that we are not tamping down the grounds. We're gonna leave them soft and fluffy and then screw on the top piece. Now, one last very important piece of information. When you are screwing the top part onto the bottom part and tightening that, make sure that you hold the bottom part using a dishcloth or an oven mitt or something that will stop you from burning your hand, because that bottom piece is full of boiling water and it is very hot metal. Okay, so our mocha pot is full and now it is time to brew some coffee. So you're gonna put the mocha pot on the stove and open the lid. This way we can see when the coffee is done brewing. You're gonna turn on the heat to medium, and I mean a firm medium. We don't wanna burn these beans, but we also don't wanna take 20 years. We want it to get to boiling. So how do we know when our coffee is done? So since your mocha pot lid is open, you will be able to see everything that is happening. So it'll boil for a long time and then you'll hear it start making some noises and coffee will start flowing up through the centerpiece. At first it'll be dark and it'll have a sort of chocolatey color to it, but eventually it'll get lighter and frothier. When you can see those little bubbles coming out of the middle section, it is time to turn off the heat and close the lid. Then, once it stops making noises, you are good to pour the coffee out into your mug. Congratulations! You are now ready to enjoy your very own cup of mocha pot espresso.